Jessica Harper, a successful architect, discovers her husband Ryan's web of deceit, including infidelity and financial betrayal, shattering the foundation of their seemingly perfect life. As Jessica unravels the extent of Ryan's affairs and fraudulent schemes, she faces manipulation, threats, and public humiliation. The story escalates as Ryan, even from prison, plots to tarnish Jessica's reputation, dragging her deeper into a whirlwind of lies and schemes. This gripping tale of betrayal exposes Ryan's audacious actions and Jessica's fight to reclaim her life, leaving viewers outraged at the audacity of infidelity and the devastating impact of trust shattered. Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Twist. We're glad you're here, whether you're watching with your morning coffee, commuting, or maybe hiding from your boss in the office. Let us know in the comments, where are you tuning in from? It all begins in Chicago, 2015, a bustling city with endless skyscrapers and even more secrets hiding behind those glass walls. Our main character is Jessica Harper, a 32-year-old architect with a sharp mind and an even sharper wardrobe. If you're imagining perfectly tailored suits and coffee cups that never run dry, you're spot on. Jessica was the definition of put together. She had her dream job at a prestigious firm, a spacious apartment downtown, and a love story that seemed straight out of a rom-com. Or so she thought. Her husband, Ryan Harper, was a charming tech entrepreneur with a smile that could sell just about anything. To outsiders, they were the it couple. But, as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Jessica and Ryan had been married for 6 years, meeting in the kind of meet-cute story you'd roll your eyes at. They'd bumped into each other at an art gallery, Jessica spilling her wine, Ryan joking that it was an abstract installation. One flirty conversation later, and their romance took off like a rocket. Fast forward, and their life looked perfect. Weekend getaways to Napa Valley, matching his and hers gym memberships, and a golden retriever named Max, who was Instagram famous. But, behind closed doors, cracks were beginning to form in their picture-perfect life. Jessica often worked late nights, obsessing over deadlines and blueprints, while Ryan's tech startup demanded constant attention. The time they once spent binge-watching Netflix together now turned into hurried goodbyes and missed dinners. Still, Jessica believed in their love. After all, they were building a future together. It all started with a text message, you know, the ones, the kind you weren't meant to see but somehow stumble upon anyway. Jessica had been looking for Ryan's phone to check the weather app when she noticed an unfamiliar name lighting up his screen. Emily W. Now, Jessica wasn't the paranoid type. She trusted Ryan, but curiosity got the better of her. The text read, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." Imagine reading that and trying to keep your breakfast down. Jessica's heart stopped, her mind racing to make sense of it. Was it a joke? A mistake? Maybe a friend texting the wrong Ryan? But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. She confronted Ryan that evening, her voice steady but laced with suspicion. Ryan laughed it off, claiming Emily was just a colleague who didn't know boundaries. "She's clingy," he said, rolling his eyes. "You know how people are." Jessica wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. So, she let it go, telling herself it was probably nothing. But you and I both know, when there's smoke, there's fire. A few weeks later, Jessica's suspicions resurfaced when Ryan started coming home later than usual. "Another late meeting," he'd say, kissing her on the cheek. His excuses seemed plausible enough, but Jessica's instincts, those gut feelings we so often ignore, were screaming at her. And then came the weekend trip. Ryan had suddenly announced he needed to visit San Francisco for work, which wasn't out of the ordinary. He often traveled for business. But this time, Jessica noticed something strange. His packing was different. He carefully folded his nicest shirts, packed cologne he rarely used, and made sure his favorite cufflinks were in the bag. Jessica felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Who packs like that for a work trip? "Why don't I come with you?" she suggested casually, forcing a smile. Ryan froze for just a second, a hesitation so slight that most people wouldn't have caught it, but Jessica did. "Oh, babe, it's mostly meetings," Ryan replied, recovering quickly. "You'd be bored out of your mind." Jessica nodded, pretending to accept his answer. But the moment Ryan left for his flight, she did something she'd never done before. She checked his laptop. What she found wasn't just a red flag. It was a full-blown parade. Ryan had left his email open. Most of the messages were standard work stuff, but buried between project updates and calendar invites was a thread labeled, "Weekend Plans." Jessica clicked on it, her hands trembling. It was a conversation between Ryan and Emily W. The emails were painfully intimate. Plans for a romantic weekend in San Francisco, mentions of a hotel suite, and even pet names Jessica had never heard before. Her world shattered in an instant. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an overreaction. It was betrayal, written in black and white, pixel by pixel, right in front of her eyes. Jessica didn't cry, not immediately. At least instead, she did what she always did when faced with a problem. She strategized. If Ryan thought he was getting away with this, he had another thing coming. The first thing she did was call her best friend, Mia, a fiery divorce attorney who didn't take nonsense from anyone. "Burn him to the ground," Mia said when Jessica explained what she'd found. "And when you're done, burn him again for good measure." Jessica chuckled for the first time all day, grateful for Mia's blunt support. But this wasn't just about revenge. It was about getting answers. When Ryan returned from his work trip, Jessica greeted him with the same calm smile she'd always worn. She didn't confront him right away. Instead, she played her cards carefully, waiting for the right moment to strike. For a few days, life went on as normal. Dinners, small talk, and the occasional shared laugh. But Jessica was silently gathering evidence. She took screenshots of the emails, quietly monitored Ryan's schedule, and even tracked his location, using a shared phone app he'd forgotten they had. It wasn't long before Jessica uncovered even more. Emily wasn't the first, or the only. That's right. Ryan's infidelity wasn't a one-time slip-up. It was a pattern, a habit. And Jessica had the receipts to prove it. And that's when she decided. Enough was enough. Jessica had spent weeks quietly building her case, and it was a masterpiece of patience and precision. While Ryan thought he was getting away with his double life, Jessica was one step ahead, methodically piecing together the details of his betrayal. At first, she considered confronting him right away, demanding an explanation, and forcing him to admit to everything. But something in her gut told her that Ryan wouldn't just own up to it. No, a man like Ryan would spin excuses, deflect blame, and manipulate the narrative. If she wanted the truth, she needed more than accusations. She needed undeniable proof. One night, while Ryan was working late, Jessica sat at her desk with her laptop open, headphones on, and a glass of wine in hand. With every email she found, every calendar entry she cross-referenced, her anger simmered just below the surface. It wasn't just the affair with Emily. There were other women late-night meetups at bars across the city flights that weren't listed on his expense reports. Jessica's determination grew with every discovery. But even as she dug deeper into Ryan's lies, she couldn't ignore the emotional weight pressing down on her. This was the man she had trusted with her life, the man she had built a future with. How had he fooled her so completely? And more importantly, how had she let herself ignore the warning signs? Still, there was no time for self-pity. Jessica wasn't about to let Ryan walk all over her. Not anymore. The turning point came on a Tuesday evening. Ryan had called Jessica earlier in the day to let her know he'd be home late again. "Big investor pitch," he'd said, his voice tinged with the same casual charm that had once swept her off her feet. Jessica knew better now. She had tracked his location through the shared phone app and saw that he wasn't at the office. He was at an upscale restaurant downtown, one she knew well because they had celebrated their anniversary there just a few months ago. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest as she slipped on her coat and grabbed her car keys. She had spent so long gathering evidence from a distance, but tonight she was done being passive. If Ryan was lying to her again, she was going to see it with her own eyes. When she arrived, the restaurant was as elegant and dimly lit as she remembered. Jessica stood just outside the entrance, her fingers gripping her phone tightly as she debated what to do next. And then, through the large windows, she saw him. Ryan sat at a corner table, laughing easily, with a woman who could only be described as glamorous, long red hair, a perfectly tailored dress, and an air of confidence that suggested she knew exactly what she wanted, and wasn't afraid to take it. Jessica didn't need to hear their conversation to know what was happening. Ryan leaned in closer, his hand resting lightly on the woman's arm as she smiled back at him. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. She felt a rush of emotions: anger, heartbreak, humiliation. But most of all, a steely resolve. This was it. She wasn't going to let Ryan make her feel small, like she was the one who had done something wrong. If he wanted to act like this, he was about to face the consequences. But Jessica didn't storm into the restaurant. No, that wasn't her style. Instead, she took a photo from outside, her phone capturing the moment in crystal clear detail. With the evidence secured, she walked back to her car, head held high. Let him think he was in the clear. For now. The next day, Jessica met Mia at a small cafe near her office. The fiery divorce attorney listened intently as Jessica recounted everything she had discovered. When Jessica showed her the photo from the restaurant, Mia's expression hardened. "This isn't just an affair," Mia said, her tone sharp. "This is a pattern. He's been lying to you for years, and he's gotten comfortable because he thinks you'll never catch on." Jessica nodded, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "I know. But what do I do now? I mean, I have all this evidence, but what?" Mia leaned forward. "You burn him to the ground. You take him for everything he's worth, and then you walk away without looking back." Jessica couldn't help but smile. Mia always had a way of cutting through the noise and getting straight to the point. "Okay," she said, her voice firmer now. "Let's do it." While Mia began drafting the divorce papers, Jessica decided to play the long game. She continued acting as if everything was normal, smiling through dinners and even laughing at Ryan's jokes. But inside, she was preparing for the moment when she would finally confront him, and she wanted to make sure it would be unforgettable. She started by gathering every piece of evidence she could find, printing out emails, saving text messages, and documenting Ryan's every move. She even went so far as to hire a private investigator to follow him during his business trips. It didn't take long for the investigator to confirm what Jessica already knew. Ryan was a serial cheater, but what surprised her was the scale of his deceit. He wasn't just seeing Emily or the woman from the restaurant. There were others, women in different cities, women he'd met through work, even women Jessica had seen in passing at their mutual friends' parties. Jessica was furious, but she was also oddly calm. The more she uncovered, the less she felt like the victim in this situation. Ryan wasn't just betraying her, he was making a fool of himself, and he didn't even realize it. She wasn't going to let him get away with it. When the moment finally came, Jessica was ready. It was a Friday evening, and Ryan had just come home from yet another meeting. Jessica greeted him with a warm smile. Dinner already prepared, and the table set. Ryan seemed surprised, but pleased. "Wow, what's the occasion?" he asked, kissing her on the cheek. Jessica shrugged, pouring him a glass of wine. "No occasion, I just thought it would be nice to have a quiet night in." As they sat down to eat, Jessica kept the conversation light, asking him about his day and laughing at his stories. Ryan, oblivious to the storm brewing, relaxed into his chair, completely unaware that his world was about to come crashing down. Halfway through the meal, Jessica set her fork down and looked at him, her expression suddenly serious. "Ryan, can I ask you something?" Ryan blinked, caught off guard by her tone. Sure, what's up?" She reached for her phone and placed it on the table, sliding it across to him. "Who's Emily W.?" For a moment, Ryan froze. His smile faltered, and his eyes darted to the phone. But he recovered quickly, leaning back in his chair with a casual laugh. "Babe, I told you she's just a colleague. Why are you bringing this up again?" Jessica didn't say anything. Instead, she opened her photo gallery and tapped on the image she had taken at the restaurant. The photo of Ryan with the glamorous redhead filled the screen as she slid the phone back to him. Ryan's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but Jessica cut him off. "Don't bother lying," she said, her voice cold. "I know everything." Ryan sat in stunned silence as Jessica began listing every lie he had told, every betrayal she had uncovered. She spoke calmly, her words sharp and precise, like a surgeon cutting through flesh. By the time she finished, Ryan looked like he had been hit by a truck. "So, here's how this is going to work," Jessica said, leaning forward. "You're going to sign these divorce papers, you're going to pack your things, and leave. And if you try to fight me on this, I will make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done." Ryan tried to protest, but Jessica wasn't having it. Save it, Ryan. I'm done listening to your excuses. Jessica's calm facade cracked the moment Ryan stormed out of their apartment, slamming the door behind him. She had given him an ultimatum, backed by evidence so damning that even Ryan, with all his smooth talking and charisma, couldn't talk his way out of it. Yet, instead of apologizing or begging for forgiveness, Ryan had retreated into anger, hurling accusations at Jessica as if she were the one who had betrayed their marriage. "I'll see you in court," he had shouted, his voice echoing down the hallway. Jessica stood in the aftermath of their confrontation, the silence of the apartment pressing down on her. It wasn't relief she felt. Not yet. The real fight was just beginning, and she knew Ryan wasn't the type to go down quietly. Over the next few days, Ryan's true colors began to show. He refused to sign the divorce papers, claiming they were unreasonable. Jessica's lawyer, Mia, saw right through his tactics. "He's trying to stall," she told Jessica during one of their strategy meetings. "He thinks if he drags this out long enough, he can wear you down." But Jessica wasn't going to let Ryan's game stop her. With Mia's help, she filed a petition for a temporary restraining order to ensure Ryan couldn't barge back into the apartment unannounced. Meanwhile, she continued to dig deeper into Ryan's finances. If he thought he could use his tech startup to hide assets, he was sorely mistaken. Then came the next twist. Late one evening, Jessica received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "I think we need to talk." The email was from Emily W. Jessica's heart raced as she opened the message. Emily's tone was surprisingly polite, even apologetic. "I had no idea Ryan was married when we started seeing each other," the email began. "He told me you were divorced. I just found out the truth, and I'm so sorry for any pain I've caused you. If you want to talk, I'm here." Jessica didn't know what to think. Was Emily being genuine? Or was this some sort of trap? Mia advised caution. "If you do meet with her, make sure it's in a public place and record everything. We don't know what her angle is." Against her better judgment, Jessica agreed to meet Emily. They arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place where the hum of conversation would drown out any chance of eavesdropping. When Emily arrived, Jessica was struck by how different she seemed in person. She wasn't the glamorous seductress Jessica had imagined, but rather someone who looked tired, anxious, and oddly vulnerable. "I need you to know I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Ryan lied to me about everything. He said you were out of the picture, that he was free to start over. I believed him." Jessica wanted to be angry, but as she listened to Emily recount her story, she realized they were both victims of Ryan's manipulation. He had played them against each other, feeding them lies to keep his double life intact. But Emily's revelations didn't stop there. "There's something else you need to know," she said, lowering her voice. "Ryan's been siphoning money from his company into a private account. He told me it was for us, to start a new life together. But I think it's much worse than that." Jessica's stomach dropped. This wasn't just infidelity. It was fraud. If what Emily was saying was true, Ryan could be facing serious legal trouble. The next day, Jessica shared everything Emily had told her with Mia. The lawyer's eyes lit up with a mix of determination and excitement. "If we can prove he's been hiding assets, we can use it to our advantage in the divorce. And if he's committing fraud, the authorities will handle the rest." Mia wasted no time subpoenaing Ryan's financial records. What they found confirmed Emily's claims. And then some. Ryan had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into offshore accounts, money that was supposed to be reinvested into his company. His investors were completely unaware, but Jessica and Mia knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. As the weeks went by, Jessica's resolve only grew stronger. She was no longer the heartbroken wife clinging to the remnants of her marriage. She was a woman on a mission, determined to hold Ryan accountable for everything he had done. Not just to her, but to everyone he had lied to and exploited. Ryan, however, was unraveling. His once confident demeanor was replaced by paranoia and desperation. He began sending Jessica angry text messages at all hours of the night, accusing her of ruining his life. "You'll regret this," one message read. "You think you've won, but you haven't seen the last of me." Jessica forwarded the messages to Mia, who advised her to stay calm. "He's trying to intimidate you," Mia said. "Don't let him. He knows he's losing, and this is his last-ditch effort to scare you into backing down." But Ryan's threats didn't stop there. One evening, Jessica returned home to find her car vandalized. The windows were shattered, and the words "liar" and "thief" were spray-painted across the doors. Jessica called the police, her hands shaking as she described what had happened. "This isn't just about the divorce anymore," she told Mia the next day. "I think he's trying to sabotage me." Mia nodded grimly. "We'll document everything. If he's willing to go this far, we need to be prepared for anything." As the court date approached, the tension reached a boiling point. Jessica knew this would be her moment of truth, the chance to finally expose Ryan for who he really was. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman Ryan had lied to, every investor he had cheated, and every person who had believed in the false image he had created. The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing. Ryan's lawyer tried to paint him as a misunderstood businessman who had made a few mistakes, but Mia wasn't having it. She presented the financial records, the emails, the text messages, every piece of evidence Jessica had painstakingly gathered over the past few months. When Emily took the stand, her testimony was the final nail in the coffin. She described Ryan's promises, his lies, and the offshore accounts he had used to hide his money. By the time she finished, even Ryan's lawyer looked defeated. The judge ruled in Jessica's favor, granting her everything she had asked for in the divorce settlement. Ryan was ordered to pay restitution to his investors and faced a separate criminal trial for fraud. As he was escorted out of the courtroom, his once smug expression was replaced by a look of pure defeat. Jessica walked out of the courthouse with her head held high, finally free from the weight of Ryan's lies. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe again. If there's one thing Jessica's story teaches us, it's this: never underestimate the power of a woman who's had enough. Jessica thought the court ruling would mark the end of her ordeal, but if anything, it was only the beginning of a new, even more intense chapter. With Ryan now facing criminal charges for fraud, his desperation reached new heights. And, as Mia had predicted, a man like Ryan wasn't going down without a fight. Just days after the ruling, Jessica began noticing strange things happening around her. A neighbor mentioned seeing an unfamiliar man lurking near her apartment late at night. Her phone started receiving anonymous calls that would disconnect as soon as she answered. And then came the envelope. One evening, as Jessica was leaving work, she found an unmarked envelope tucked under the windshield wiper of her car. Inside was a single photo, grainy, but unmistakable. It showed Jessica sitting in the cafe with Emily during their earlier meeting. Scribbled across the bottom in bold red marker were the words, "Be careful who you trust." Jessica's blood ran cold. Someone was watching her, but who and why? Mia took the photo seriously. "This isn't just intimidation, it's a threat," she said, pacing back and forth in Jessica's living room. "Ryan must have someone working for him. He's trying to scare you into backing off before the criminal trial." But Jessica wasn't going to be intimidated. If Ryan thought he could rattle her, he clearly hadn't been paying attention. She installed new locks, upgraded her home security system, and hired a private investigator to figure out who was behind the surveillance. The private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Vanessa, worked quickly. Within a week. She confirmed Jessica's suspicions. Ryan had hired someone to dig up dirt on her, and Emily. But Vanessa also uncovered something unexpected. "He's not just targeting you," Vanessa said, sliding a file across the table. "He's trying to pin the fraud on Emily." Jessica's stomach churned as she flipped through the file. Ryan had falsified documents, making it look like Emily had been involved in the offshore accounts. He was trying to shift the blame entirely onto her, hoping to avoid prosecution himself. Jessica didn't waste any time. She met with Emily the next day. Laying out everything Vanessa had discovered, Emily was horrified. "I trusted him," she said, her voice shaking. "Even after everything, I didn't think he'd go this far." "He'll go as far as he needs to save himself," Jessica said, "but we're not going to let him." The two women decided to team up, pooling their resources and working with Mia to strengthen the case against Ryan. It was an unlikely partnership. Two women brought together by betrayal, but they shared a common goal: justice. As the criminal trial approached, Ryan's behavior became increasingly erratic. He showed up to court hearings disheveled and angry, lashing out at reporters and even his own legal team. Meanwhile, Jessica and Emily worked tirelessly with Mia and Vanessa to ensure every piece of evidence was airtight. Then came the night that changed everything. Jessica was home alone, going over some final notes for the trial, when she heard a loud crash from the front of her apartment. Her heart raced as she grabbed her phone and crept toward the noise. The front window was shattered, glass scattered across the floor. Outside, a dark figure disappeared into the night. The police arrived quickly, but whoever had broken in was long gone. Still, it was clear the intruder wasn't just trying to scare Jessica. They had left a message. Written in spray paint across the wall of her living room were the words, "Drop the case or else." The break-in was the final straw. Jessica moved into a secure location, with around-the-clock protection provided by Vanessa's team. But even in hiding, she refused to back down. "This isn't just about me anymore," she told Mia. "It's about holding him accountable for everything he's done." The trial began in a packed courtroom, with media outlets covering every twist and turn. Ryan's lawyers tried to paint him as a victim of circumstance, claiming the fraud was orchestrated by others within the company. But Jessica and Emily's testimony, combined with the mountain of evidence they had gathered, left little room for doubt. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Mia presented the final piece of evidence, a recording of Ryan admitting to the fraud during a conversation with one of his associates. The recording had been obtained by Vanessa during her investigation, and it was damning. When the jury returned with a guilty verdict, the relief was almost overwhelming. Ryan was sentenced to prison, his empire in ruins. But for Jessica, the victory was bittersweet. The man she had once loved had turned out to be a stranger, someone capable of unimaginable deceit. In the aftermath of the trial, Jessica began the process of rebuilding her life. She moved into a new apartment, started therapy, and even adopted a rescue dog, a scrappy little mutt named Luna, who quickly became her constant companion. Emily, too, began to heal. She left the city and started over in a new town, far away from the chaos Ryan had brought into her life. The two women stayed in touch, their unlikely friendship a testament to their shared resilience. And as for Ryan, well, let's just say he won't be charming his way out of a prison sentence anytime soon. The morning of Ryan's sentencing hearing was unusually quiet. Jessica stood by her apartment window, sipping coffee as she watched the city wake up. There was a strange sense of finality to the day, as if all the chaos of the past few months was building toward this single moment. She thought back to everything Ryan had put her through, the lies, the betrayal, the threats, and felt a steely determination settle over her. Ryan deserved everything that was coming to him, and Jessica was ready to watch him face the consequences. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. Reporters lined the back rows, their cameras poised to capture every moment Ryan sat at the defendant's table, his once confident demeanor replaced by a hollow, almost defeated expression. His legal team whispered to him, but he barely acknowledged them, staring straight ahead with a look of resignation. Jessica took her seat near the front, flanked by Mia and Vanessa. She hadn't expected to feel nervous, but as the proceedings began, she found herself gripping the edge of her seat. This wasn't just about the sentencing. It was about closure, about finally putting this chapter of her life behind her. The judge reviewed the charges: fraud, embezzlement, falsifying financial records. The list went on, each count a testament to the depth of Ryan's deceit. The prosecution presented their final arguments, painting a vivid picture of Ryan's crimes and the impact they had on his victims. But it was the defense's turn that took everyone by surprise. Ryan's lawyer stood, adjusting his tie as he addressed the court. "Your Honor, while we do not contest the facts of this case, we wish to provide some context that may influence the court's decision on sentencing." Jessica's stomach tightened. What was this? The lawyer continued, claiming Ryan had grown up in a toxic household with unrealistic expectations placed on him, leading him to develop unhealthy coping mechanisms. It was a desperate attempt to elicit sympathy, and Jessica could see right through it. But the real bombshell came when Ryan himself took the stand. He looked directly at Jessica as he spoke, his voice surprisingly steady. "I know I've caused a lot of pain," he said. "To my investors, to my friends, and most of all, to Jessica." Jessica froze. Was this an apology? "I don't expect forgiveness," Ryan continued, his expression somber. "But I want you to know, Jessica, that I never meant for things to get this far. I loved you, I still do. And I'm sorry for everything I've done." The courtroom was silent, everyone hanging on Ryan's words. For a brief moment, Jessica felt a flicker of doubt. Was he being sincere? Or was this just another manipulation? A last-ditch effort to salvage what little dignity he had left? Mia leaned over, whispering, "Don't fall for it. He's playing the sympathy card." Jessica nodded, her resolve hardening. She knew Ryan too well to believe he had suddenly grown a conscience. This wasn't about remorse. It was about self-preservation. The judge wasn't moved by Ryan's performance. When the sentencing was finally announced, it was clear that justice would be served. Ryan was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, with mandatory restitution to his investors. It wasn't the harshest sentence Jessica had hoped for, but it was enough. As the bailiffs led Ryan away, he turned to look at Jessica one last time. His eyes were filled with something she couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe, or anger, but she didn't look away. She held his gaze until he was out of sight, a small, defiant act that felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. In the weeks that followed, Jessica began to rebuild her life. She threw herself into her work, taking on new projects that challenged and inspired her. She started therapy, finally unpacking the emotional toll of her marriage and everything that had come with it. And she found solace in her growing support network: Mia, Vanessa, and even Emily, who had become an unexpected but valued friend. But perhaps the most surprising development came when Jessica received a letter from Ryan. It arrived one afternoon, addressed in his familiar handwriting. She debated whether to open it, unsure if she wanted to hear what he had to say. In the end, curiosity won out. The letter was brief, almost painfully so. Ryan admitted to his mistakes, but it was clear he still didn't fully understand the damage he had caused. He ended with a simple line that stuck with Jessica long after she had folded the letter and put it away. "I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me." Jessica didn't respond. She didn't need to. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that she could move forward without the weight of Ryan's actions holding her back. She adopted a new mantra: "I am not defined by what happened to me, but by how I choose to move forward." And move forward, she did. Months later, Jessica found herself back at the cafe where she had first met Emily. They had decided to meet for coffee, their conversations no longer revolving around Ryan, but about their lives and the new paths they were forging. "You seem lighter," Emily said, smiling as she sipped her latte. Jessica nodded. "I feel lighter. It's like I finally let go of everything that was holding me back." Emily reached across the table, giving Jessica's hand a quick squeeze. "You deserve that. We both do." As they talked, Jessica realized just how far she had come. The pain, the betrayal, the chaos. It was all part of her story, but it wasn't the end of it. She had taken control of her narrative, turning her darkest moments into a foundation for something stronger. Jessica's life seemed to be on a steady path of recovery, but as anyone who's been through betrayal knows, the past doesn't let go so easily. Just when she thought the worst was behind her, another twist brought her right back to the edge. It started with a phone call. Jessica had been at work, reviewing the final stages of a major architectural project, when her assistant interrupted with an urgent message. A journalist from a prominent business magazine wanted to speak with her about Ryan. Jessica hesitated before returning the call. She'd kept her distance from the media circus surrounding Ryan's criminal trial, choosing instead to focus on rebuilding her life. But curiosity got the better of her, and she dialed the number. The journalist's voice was warm, but direct. "Ms. Harper, I wanted to give you a heads up. We're publishing an article on Ryan's case, and I thought you might want to comment." Jessica felt her stomach tighten. "I don't see why my input would be necessary," she replied carefully. "Well," the journalist continued, "it seems Ryan has been making statements to the press from prison. He's claiming you were aware of his financial dealings and that you benefited from them. I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond." Jessica's grip tightened on the phone. Ryan was trying to drag her down with him, even from behind bars. "Thank you for letting me know," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I won't be commenting at this time, but I appreciate the courtesy." As she hung up, Jessica realized this wasn't just about a hit piece. Ryan's accusations could have real consequences if people believed him. She needed to act fast. Jessica called Mia immediately, recounting the journalist's warning. "He's trying to pin this on me," she said, pacing her living room. If people believe I was involved, it could ruin everything I've worked for. Mia was calm and composed, as always. We've dealt with worse, she said. Ryan's grasping at straws. We'll issue a formal statement refuting his claims, but I think it's time we went on the offensive. What do you mean? Jessica asked. I mean, we've been playing defense long enough. It's time to expose the full extent of what Ryan's done. To you, to Emily, to everyone. Let's make sure his lies have no legs to stand on. Jessica agreed, and together they began preparing to counter Ryan's narrative. Vanessa joined the effort, digging up every piece of evidence that discredited Ryan's claims. Emails, financial records, court transcripts. It was all meticulously compiled into a dossier that would leave no doubt about Jessica's innocence. Meanwhile, the journalist's article hit the stands, and as expected, Ryan's statements caused a stir. Headlines splashed across major outlets, with phrases like, "Ex-wife under scrutiny," and "Ryan Harper points fingers from prison." Jessica found herself at the center of a media frenzy, reporters camping outside her apartment and peppering her with questions whenever she stepped outside. At first, Jessica felt overwhelmed, but as she read through the article, she realized something important. Ryan's accusations were vague and unsupported. He had no evidence, only his word, which, given his conviction, didn't hold much weight. With Mia's help, Jessica issued her own statement, pointing out the inconsistencies in Ryan's claims and providing documented proof that she had no involvement in his fraudulent activities. The statement was concise, but powerful, and it quickly shifted public opinion back in her favor. But Ryan wasn't done. A week later, Jessica received another letter, this time from Ryan's lawyer. The letter accused her of defamation, claiming that her public statement had damaged Ryan's reputation. Jessica laughed out loud as she read it. "He's worried about his reputation?" she said to Mia. "That's rich, coming from a convicted felon." Mia wasn't amused. "He's testing you. He wants to see if he can intimidate you into backing off, but we're not going to let him." Jessica nodded. She was done letting Ryan control the narrative. If he wanted a fight, he was going to get one. The turning point came during an exclusive interview Jessica agreed to give with a respected journalist. It was a calculated move, designed to set the record straight once and for all. Jessica didn't hold back. "I trusted Ryan," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "I believed in him, and he used that trust to manipulate and deceive me, but I refused to let him drag me down with him. The truth is on my side, and I won't let his lies define me." The interview aired to widespread acclaim, with viewers praising Jessica's courage and resilience. Public sentiment shifted even further in her favor, leaving Ryan's smear campaign in tatters. But just when it seemed the tide had fully turned, another bombshell dropped. Vanessa uncovered evidence that Ryan had been secretly communicating with one of his former business associates, trying to orchestrate a scheme from behind bars. The details were murky, but it was clear Ryan hadn't learned his lesson. Jessica was furious. "How is he even allowed to do this?" she demanded. "He's not," Vanessa replied. "But people like Ryan don't care about rules. They only care about getting what they want." Mia acted quickly, alerting the authorities and ensuring the evidence was brought to light. Within days, Ryan was slapped with additional charges for conspiracy and attempting to obstruct justice. His already bleak future grew even darker. For Jessica, the ordeal was a stark reminder of who Ryan truly was, a man who would stop at nothing to serve his own interests. But it also reinforced her determination to rise above his pettiness and rebuild her life on her own terms. In the months that followed, Jessica's career flourished. She landed a high-profile project that put her name on the map, earning her widespread recognition in the architectural world. She also found time to focus on herself, exploring new hobbies, and reconnecting with old friends. Emily, too, found her footing. She moved to a new city, started her own business, and even began dating again. The two women stayed in touch, their friendship a testament to the strength they had found in each other. And as for Ryan, well, let's just say his story ended in the place it deserved to, behind bars, with no one left to manipulate. The stakes were higher than ever. Ryan's attempt to pin the blame on Jessica had backfired spectacularly, but the ripple effects of his schemes continued to haunt her. Every move Ryan made, even from prison, seemed designed to drag her back into his orbit of chaos. But Jessica wasn't the same person she had been at the start of this journey. She had grown stronger, more resolute, and she was determined to end this chapter of her life once and for all. The breaking point came one evening, when Jessica received a call from Vanessa. The private investigator sounded uncharacteristically tense. "We've found something you need to see," she said. "It's about Ryan, and it's bigger than we thought." Vanessa laid out the evidence in Jessica's living room, her voice calm but urgent. Ryan's most recent scheme wasn't just an attempt to clear his name. It was a full-blown conspiracy to siphon money from his former investors, under the guise of restitution. Using a network of intermediaries, Ryan had convinced several of his victims to invest in a so-called recovery fund, promising to repay their losses with interest. But in reality, the fund was nothing more than a front for another scam. Jessica was livid. "How is he even pulling this off from prison?" she demanded. "He's working through proxies," Vanessa explained. "People on the outside who are still loyal to him, but we've tracked the money trail, and it all leads back to him." Mia, who had joined the meeting via video call, was equally outraged. "This isn't just fraud, it's brazen. He's using the same people he already betrayed, and he's counting on them being too desperate to question him." Jessica's hands trembled as she processed the information. Ryan's actions weren't just unethical, they were cruel. He was preying on people's hope, exploiting their trust to line his pockets yet again. But this time, Jessica had the power to stop him. The next day, Jessica and Mia presented the evidence to the authorities. It didn't take long for the FBI to get involved, launching an investigation that quickly uncovered the full extent of Ryan's new scheme. The fallout was immediate. Several of Ryan's co-conspirators were arrested, and the prison tightened restrictions on his communications, cutting off his ability to orchestrate further scams. But even as justice closed in, Ryan refused to go quietly. Through his lawyer, he issued a public statement, denying any involvement, and accusing Jessica of fabricating evidence to ruin his life. The media latched onto the story, reigniting the frenzy that Jessica had worked so hard to escape. Mia was furious. "He's playing the victim again," she said, pacing Jessica's office. "He knows he's cornered, and this is his last-ditch effort to shift the blame." Jessica, however, remained calm. She had learned not to let Ryan's theatrics get under her skin. "Let him dig his own grave," she said. "We have the truth on our side, and the truth always comes out." And come out it did. A week later, the FBI held a press conference announcing the results of their investigation. The evidence against Ryan was overwhelming, and the additional charges ensured that his prison sentence would be significantly extended. For Jessica, it was a moment of vindication. She had stood her ground, fought back, and won. But the victory was bittersweet. As the dust settled, Jessica found herself grappling with the emotional toll of everything she had been through. The betrayal, the lies, the relentless attacks on her character. It had all taken a toll. She realized that while she had defeated Ryan, she still had work to do to heal herself. Jessica's journey toward healing began with small steps. She took a sabbatical from work, using the time to reconnect with herself and the things that brought her joy. She started journaling, pouring her thoughts and emotions onto the page in an effort to make sense of her experience. She also leaned on her support system, Mia, Vanessa, and Emily, who reminded her that she wasn't alone. Emily, in particular, had become a surprising source of strength. The two women had gone from adversaries to allies, their shared experiences forging a bond that defied explanation. One evening, over a glass of wine, Emily turned to Jessica and said, "You know, we're not just survivors, we're warriors. We took everything Ryan threw at us, and we came out stronger." Jessica smiled, realizing for the first time that she truly believed it. She had been through hell, but she had emerged on the other side with a renewed sense of purpose. As the months passed, Jessica began to rebuild her life. She returned to work with a fresh perspective, using her platform to advocate for women in leadership roles. She also started volunteering at a local organization that supported victims of financial fraud, sharing her story to help others find their own strength. But perhaps the most significant change came when Jessica decided to speak publicly about her experience. She agreed to give a keynote address at a conference on resilience, knowing it was an opportunity to turn her pain into power. Standing on the stage, Jessica looked out at the audience and took a deep breath. "We all face moments in life that test us," she began. "Moments that force us to confront our fears, our doubts, and the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. For me, that moment came when I discovered the person I trusted most had betrayed me. But what I've learned is that betrayal doesn't have to define us. It can be the thing that pushes us to grow, to fight, and to become the best version of ourselves. The audience erupted into applause, and Jessica felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced in years. She had taken the worst moments of her life and transformed them into something meaningful. And in doing so, she had found a strength she never knew she had. The climax of Jessica's story was fast approaching, but it wasn't going to come without a fight. Even as the weight of Ryan's schemes came crashing down on him, he still found ways to make his presence felt. His refusal to take responsibility for his actions wasn't just a stain on his character. It was a direct attack on Jessica's ability to move forward. Jessica had fought tooth and nail to reclaim her life, but the battle wasn't over yet. It started with a cryptic letter, delivered to Jessica's office one morning. The envelope was plain, the handwriting familiar. Jessica hesitated before opening it, her mind racing with possibilities. Inside was a single piece of paper, covered in Ryan's handwriting. "Jessica, you think you've won, but this isn't over. You'll see that the truth always finds a way to come out. You're not as innocent as you think. Ryan." Jessica felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't sure if it was a threat, a bluff, or simply Ryan's way of trying to maintain some semblance of power. Either way, she wasn't about to let it derail her progress. Mia, however, was livid when Jessica showed her the letter later that day. "This is harassment, plain and simple," she said, pacing Jessica's office. "We need to report this to the authorities immediately." Jessica nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan's words carried more weight than they seemed. He wasn't just lashing out. He was planning something. Vanessa, ever the meticulous investigator, began digging into Ryan's recent activities. Despite the restrictions placed on him in prison, he had managed to maintain contact with a few key allies on the outside. Vanessa's research uncovered a trail of encrypted emails and coded messages, all pointing to one thing. Ryan was orchestrating another move, and it involved Jessica. The revelation came just as Jessica was beginning to feel like she could breathe again. The news hit her like a punch to the gut. What could he possibly have left to gain? She asked Vanessa during a late-night meeting. Vanessa's expression was grim. "Control," she replied. "Ryan's lost everything. His career, his freedom, his reputation. The only thing he has left is the ability to disrupt your life, and he's not going to let that go." The tension reached its peak during a public event where Jessica was set to receive an award for her contributions to the architectural community. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a moment where Jessica could finally feel proud of how far she had come, but Ryan had other plans. As Jessica stepped onto the stage to accept her award, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. A man, unshaven and frantic, began shouting accusations at Jessica. "She's a fraud," he yelled, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "She's just as guilty as Ryan Harper." Security quickly intervened, escorting the man out of the building, but the damage was done. Jessica's mind raced as she tried to process what had just happened. Who was this man, and how had Ryan managed to orchestrate this disruption from prison? The aftermath of the incident was swift and chaotic. Social media exploded with speculation, and Jessica found herself once again at the center of unwanted attention. Reporters hounded her for comments, and whispers of doubt began to creep into the professional circles she had worked so hard to rebuild. Mia and Vanessa worked tirelessly to contain the fallout. The man who had disrupted the event was identified as one of Ryan's former business associates, someone who had lost everything in the wake of Ryan's conviction. It became clear that Ryan had manipulated the man into believing that Jessica was partially to blame, using his desperation as a weapon. Jessica was furious, but more than that, she was exhausted. "I don't know how much more of this I can take," she admitted to Mia during a late-night phone call. "It feels like every time I take a step forward, Ryan finds a way to drag me back." Mia's response was firm. "That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to wear you down because he knows he can't win outright. But you're stronger than this, Jessica. You've proven that over and over again." Determined to reclaim her narrative, Jessica decided to take a bold step. She reached out to a prominent journalist she trusted, offering to sit down for an in-depth interview about her experience. It was a risky move, but Jessica knew that transparency was her best defense against Ryan's lies. The interview was raw and unfiltered, with Jessica laying bare the full scope of Ryan's betrayal and the lengths he had gone to in order to destroy her. She spoke about the emotional toll it had taken, but also about the strength she had found in the process. "Ryan tried to define me by his actions," she said, "but I refused to let him have that power." The interview aired to widespread acclaim, shifting public opinion firmly back in Jessica's favor. Her vulnerability resonated with viewers, and for the first time in months, she felt like she was finally taking control of her story. But the final turning point came when Vanessa uncovered a crucial piece of evidence that tied everything together. One of Ryan's encrypted emails revealed a detailed plan to fabricate evidence against Jessica, planting fake documents that would implicate her in his financial crimes. The plot was elaborate, but it fell apart under scrutiny, thanks to Vanessa's relentless investigation. Armed with this evidence, Mia filed a motion to restrict Ryan's communication privileges even further, effectively cutting him off from the outside world. The court granted the motion, and Ryan's ability to cause chaos was finally neutralized. For Jessica, it was a moment of profound relief. The battle was over, not just legally, but emotionally. Ryan's grasp on her life had finally been broken. In the weeks that followed, Jessica found herself reflecting on everything she had been through. The pain, the betrayal, the constant struggle. It had all shaped her into someone stronger, someone who refused to be defined by the actions of others. She channeled her energy into her work and her advocacy efforts, using her platform to support other women who had faced similar challenges. Her story became a beacon of hope for those who felt trapped by the weight of betrayal, a reminder that it was possible to rise above even the darkest moments. And as for Ryan, well, his story ended where it belonged, forgotten, as Jessica moved forward with her life. Jessica stood in her new apartment, a bright and airy space overlooking the city skyline. It had been months since the chaos surrounding Ryan finally came to an end, but the echoes of that tumultuous time were still present. Yet, as she unpacked the last box, a box of books she hadn't touched in years, she realized how far she had come. The scars were there, but so was the healing. She had not only survived, but thrived. The resolution of Ryan's schemes brought a strange kind of peace to Jessica's life. His failed attempt to fabricate evidence against her had backfired so spectacularly that his reputation, what little was left of it, was obliterated. The final court ruling had stripped Ryan of his ability to contact anyone outside the prison, ensuring he could no longer manipulate or harass anyone. For Jessica, it was the ultimate victory. Ryan was powerless, and she no longer had to look over her shoulder, waiting for his next move. It was over. But resolution didn't mean forgetting. Jessica knew she couldn't simply erase the pain and betrayal from her past, nor did she want to. Those experiences, as painful as they were, had shaped her into someone stronger and wiser. She had learned to trust herself, to value her own instincts, and to stand firm in the face of adversity. Emily had moved to Seattle, starting her life anew. The two women kept in touch, their once strained connection now a source of mutual support. Jessica found herself reflecting on how unlikely their friendship was, born out of shared pain, but blossoming into something genuine. "We're survivors," Emily had said during one of their last phone calls, "and we're better for it." Jessica smiled at the thought. Emily was right. They had faced down the storm and come out the other side stronger. Jessica's career had also taken a new trajectory. After receiving her award at the Disrupted ceremony, her professional reputation soared. The architectural firm she worked for gave her a leadership role, and she began mentoring young women entering the field. "We build foundations," Jessica often told them, "not just for buildings, but for ourselves." Her advocacy work also flourished, partnering with Vanessa. She helped establish a support network for victims of financial and emotional abuse. The organization, aptly named Resilient Roots, offered legal aid, counseling, and workshops to help people reclaim their lives after betrayal. It was Jessica's way of turning her pain into purpose. And then there was Jessica herself. For the first time in years, she felt truly free. Free from Ryan's lies, free from the weight of her past, and free to imagine a future that was entirely her own. She started traveling, taking solo trips to places she had always dreamed of visiting. In Paris, she stood beneath the Eiffel Tower, marveling at its grandeur. In Kyoto, she wandered through bamboo forests, finding a sense of peace she hadn't known she needed. These moments weren't just about seeing new places. They were about rediscovering herself. Each trip was a reminder that her life was hers to live, unencumbered by the shadows of her past. The final chapter of Jessica's journey came during a quiet evening in her new apartment. She sat by the window, a cup of tea in hand, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about Ryan, about the man she had loved, and the betrayal that had shattered her trust. She thought about the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had discovered within herself. And then, she thought about the future. For the first time in a long time, it felt wide open, full of possibilities. Jessica didn't know exactly what was ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready for whatever came next. Jessica's story is more than a tale of betrayal and redemption. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She faced challenges that could have broken her, but instead, they became the foundation for a life built on strength and self-worth. And her story isn't unique. Many of us have faced moments where we felt betrayed, defeated, or lost. But as Jessica's journey shows us, it's not the betrayal that defines us. It's how we choose to rise afterward. If you found inspiration in Jessica's journey, let us know in the comments what resonated with you most. And if you've ever faced a similar situation, how did you find your way forward? As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories of resilience, courage, and growth. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Until then, remember, no matter what life throws your way, you have the power to rise above it.